US cars are stuck. No, seriously, like really stuck. Good evening, let's talk about cars, specifically American cars. You know, those big, beautiful machines we love? Well, right now many of them aren't going anywhere, not because of traffic, oh no. They are stuck because of German jobs. Yes, German jobs. So, how on earth are German jobs thousands of miles away causing your future Ford Explorer to become an endangered species? It's all about the magic of globalization, my friends. You see, modern cars are not just hunks of American steel anymore. They are complex international puzzles. And a surprising number of critical pieces for those puzzles come from, you guessed it, Germany. German manufacturing is legendary. They make fantastic things, cameras, fancy appliances, and crucially, highly specialized car parts. Think intricate electronics, precision-engineered transmission components, the little doohickeys that make your car go vroom instead of clunk. US automakers have become incredibly reliant on these German suppliers. It's a bit like relying on your one friend who knows how to cook for every single meal. This interdependency isn't new. For decades, the global supply chain has been woven tighter than a Bavarian pretzel. US automakers designed systems that depended on just-in-time delivery of these German parts. This means they don't keep huge stockpiles lying around. If there's a hiccup in Germany, say, if German auto part workers decide they've had enough, then the American assembly line grinds to a halt. Your Chevy isn't just catching a cold, it's on life support because its German-made immune system, aka its engine control unit, is suddenly on strike. And that, in a nutshell, is how German jobs hold the keys to a surprising number of American ignitions. What went wrong with these German jobs to cause such a transatlantic automotive apocalypse? It was a massive, coordinated series of strikes by German auto parts workers. These weren't your garden variety one-day walkouts. These were serious, we're not making another Bolt until our demands are met kind of strikes. Their demands focused on better pay, shorter hours, and more job security. German unions are strong, very strong. For years there had been simmering tensions. Wages hadn't kept pace with inflation, and the shift towards electric vehicles was causing anxiety. Companies underestimated the resolve of their workforce. Negotiations stalled, and then, boom! The supply of critical components simply stopped. This freeze in shipments was a direct consequence of this labor action. The striking German workers were holding a significant portion of the US auto industry hostage. US plants had minimal inventory. When the German parts stopped arriving, American assembly lines fell silent. One broken link, and the whole chain snaps. It's a wake-up call for anyone who thought supply chains were boring. Section 4. Meanwhile, back in the USA, tumbleweeds in Detroit, tears in Toledo. The moment those German parts stopped flowing, the impact on American soil was swift and brutal. In Detroit, the spiritual home of the American car, assembly plants that once buzzed with activity fell eerily quiet. Thousands of American auto workers who just weeks before were gainfully employed suddenly found themselves furloughed or laid off. Their livelihoods, dependent on a steady stream of components from halfway across the world, were abruptly put on hold. It's hard to pay your mortgage with a waiting for German parts IOU. The domino effect didn't stop at the factory gates. Car dealerships, already grappling with fluctuating demand, saw their inventories dwindle to almost nothing. Salespeople, accustomed to a steady flow of new models, were left with empty lots and even emptier showrooms. Imagine trying to sell a car that doesn't exist yet, and you have no idea when it might arrive. Consumers, eager for new vehicles, faced indefinite delays, soaring prices for used cars, and a whole lot of frustration. The economic pain radiated outwards. Parts suppliers in the US who make components that are assembled the German parts also had to slow down production. The logistics industry, from trucking companies to port workers, felt the pinch as fewer cars and components needed moving. This wasn't just an industry problem, it was rapidly becoming a national economic headache. The severity of the crisis was underscored by the sheer helplessness felt by many. Section 5, President Who, Trump's masterclass in looking the other way, probably at a golf course. Now you might be wondering, where was the American leadership in all this? Specifically, where was the former president, Donald Trump, the man who promised to bring back American manufacturing with a roar? When this German jobs crisis hit the US auto industry like a runaway Trabant, his administration's response was, shall we say, less than overwhelming. Trump's presidency was characterized by a focus on tariffs, trade wars, mostly with China, and a general America First rhetoric that often seemed to overlook the complexities of global supply chains. While he was busy slapping tariffs on steel and aluminum, the intricate dance of international parts supply for the auto industry apparently wasn't high on his radar. When the crisis did eventually become too big to ignore, the Trump administration's handling of it felt reactive and frankly a bit bewildered. There were probably some strongly worded statements, maybe a threat of a new tariff on cuckoo clocks or something equally tangential. But the core issue, the US auto industry's deep reliance on these specific German components and the lack of a contingency plan, seemed to catch them completely off guard. It's as if they believed American cars were still built entirely from American parts, forged in the fires of Mount Rushmore by bald eagles. Section 6, the blame NATO, everyone's pointing, nobody's fixing. Once the US car shipments ground to a halt and the layoffs started, the great American tradition of the blame NATO kicked into high gear. Suddenly, everyone was an expert on German labor law and international logistics. Politicians from local mayors and factory towns to senators in Washington started pointing fingers with the ferocity of a toddler who's just been denied ice cream. The Trump administration naturally blamed Germany, the unions, probably the Democrats, and maybe even the wind for blowing the ships off course. Industry experts and economists, some of whom had been muttering warnings about supply chain fragility for years, probably experienced a grim sense of vindication. Warnings about over-reliance on single-source suppliers or the risks of just-in-time inventory in a volatile world had been dismissed as academic or overly cautious. Now, caution looked pretty darn sensible, didn't it? But hindsight, as they say, is 20/20, especially when you're looking at an empty factory floor. The media, of course, had a field day. Headlines screamed about the German gridlock and the Teutonic tangle. Pundits debated endlessly. Was it corporate greed for seeking cheaper German parts? Was it union overreach in Germany? Was it government incompetence in the US for not having a strategic reserve of, gearboxes? The truth, as always, was probably a messy combination of all those things. But nuanced explanations don't make for good sound bites, so the finger-pointing continued, loud and largely unproductive. Section 7. So, are we all riding bikes now? The future of cars and not annoying Germany. So, where do we go from here? Are we all doomed to trade in our SUVs for bicycles? Probably not, but this German parts fiasco has certainly thrown a giant monkey wrench into the works of the US auto industry. The immediate future for US car shipments looks complicated. Even if the German strikes end tomorrow, ramping up production will take months. This crisis could lead to serious soul-searching within the US auto industry. Efficiency through globalized supply chains needs to be balanced with resilience. This might mean diversifying suppliers, even if it costs more. It might mean investing in domestic production of critical components, or paying attention to labor relations in supplier countries. As for US-German relations, they've seen better days. This episode isn't likely to improve things. The economic fallout will strain diplomatic ties. There will be calls for fairer trade and for the US to be less reliant on others. It's a tricky path to navigate. You want access to their engineering, but not industry, halts over disputes. Ultimately, the future of US car shipments depends on learning hard lessons. It's about understanding that an industrial dispute in Duisburg can mean job losses in Detroit. It's about foresight, planning, and not putting all your automotive eggs in one German basket. Otherwise, we might find ourselves back here again wondering why our cars won't start. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check if my toaster has any German parts. I'm starting to get nervous.